Hello and welcome to chapter 2. During this chapter we're going to be looking at the positions that you're going to be performing each of your exercises from. It's vitally important that you get these right, because if you don't, you'll find that the actual benefits of each movement are lessened and you're not going to get anywhere near the same effect in your body. We'll look at, first off then, we'll look at standing static posture, because this is the position that absolutely every single one of your movements are going to start and finish from. So it's vital that this is done right. Coming down to the feet then, it's important that your arches of your feet are off the floor. If they're not, you might need to squeeze your bum slightly and press the weight of your feet just into the outside edge here. That's important. Next, we're going to soften the knees just a bit, squeeze the bum and tilt the pelvis up. So if I show you that from the side on, okay, we should end up with the ankle and the knee in roughly the same alignment. So the weight on the outside of the foot, knee slightly bent, bum squeezed, and pelvis tucked under here. From a side-on position then, you should be able to see ankles, knees, hips and shoulders roughly in the same line. So we want to avoid this. This movement here is called protraction. We want to avoid this and keep the shoulders pulled back slightly by tensioning the muscle group across the upper back here. We also want your neck into the back of your collar, and you're going to be looking ever so slightly above your own height. And this will just keep everything in the correct alignment. So if we turn you back on to the front mark. Okay. This position is vitally important for absolutely every single thing else that we're going to do. So make sure you get this right. So let's just have a quick checklist. Arches off the floor, weight into the outside of the feet. Knees slightly bent and unlocked. Bum squeezed and pelvis tilted backwards slightly. Your shoulders are pulled back, your chest is high, and you're going to be looking slightly above your own height. So as I said, every single movement starts and finishes from this position. Nothing else will do. So if you need to be thinking about this at the start and finish of every movement. Am I in the correct position? Am I in the correct position? That's vitally important. Now we're going to be doing this with a medicine ball, but you can just as easily do this with a bag of sugar, a bottle of water, a can of beans. Medicine ball's slightly better because the weight's evenly distributed, but absolutely anything will do. Now if you're particularly deconditioned, you might find that just going through the motions without any loading will be enough. Only you'll be able to know that, but make sure you'll know whether you're on the correct weight or not by whether you can hold the posture. If you can't hold the posture, then the weight is simply too heavy for you. Don't cheat yourself by taking a heavier weight than you have to. It's really important that every movement is carried out with what we call the process of movement mastery. You lock yourself into every position and get everything right, rather than load yourself with a heavy ball or a heavy weight and do it all wrong. Okay? It's not about the weight, it's about the exactitude of the motions that you're going to be going through. So I'm going to ask Mark to pick up the ball. The first motion in integrated movement training starts with a simple overhead lift. Okay, the elbows are locked, you're going to take your hands up over your head to full arms extension and actually press the ball at the ceiling. As you come back down, it's the exact reverse motion. Now what we're watching for is that there's no excessive motion through the upper back. You should be able to remain in a still position. Okay, so we'll get Mark to do it 5 times to the front, just so you can see what that looks like. And again, the head is up, there's a full length reach here, there's not too much sway through the pelvis. That's important. Now Mark, if I could get you to turn sideways on, either way, it's absolutely fine. Your head up, your chest is up, we've got a nice straight line from the back of the head, down to the back, into the pelvis. The knees are unlocked. Okay, from that position, Mark, you can take your arms up overhead. And again, you'll notice as Mark's arms come overhead, he's not bobbing his head forward. A lot of people push their head forward in this movement, and it's important that you don't. Okay, so keep your neck in the back of your collar and stay looking up slightly above your own height. Come back down, Mark, and we'll do 5 repetitions of that, just to see the amount of body sway. You'll see that Mark is naturally bobbing slightly, and that's a natural movement. That will happen to everyone. But he's not collapsing in through his head, he's not collapsing in through his shoulders, and it's a fairly tight motion. Something else to be watching out for here then is the pelvic alignment. Watch that the pelvis doesn't tip forward too dramatically. If it does, you're going to lose all the benefit of the motion and potentially do something to your back that you don't want to do. Okay, after 5 repetitions of this motion, if I can turn you back on square, Mark, you're going to actually take the ball out to the outside of the left hip. Your left hand is going to be palm facing up, and your right hand is going to be palm facing down. Okay? From that position, we're quite simply going to take the ball up in a diagonal pattern straight across the chest and reverse the hand position so that the left hand is now on top. So it looks something like this. Okay, the hands are twisting. So we can get Mark to do that for us. Okay, we're also looking at where the ball is travelling this time. So we're looking down here, and we're looking up there. There's a reason for that, and I'll explain that to you in a bit more depth when we go through it at full speed. Okay, Mark, if you can do the same for me. Looking up, you'll notice that Mark's staying nice and tight here. He's not arching his back at the top, he's staying neutral, and the pattern is fairly consistent. It's travelling along the same line each time. What we're looking for is a straight line, like a slice, as opposed to a scoop. Okay? Avoid making a scoop. We want a nice straight slice to go across the front of his chest at about 45 degrees. Once you've done that, obviously we need to balance that on the other side. So we're going to take the ball down to the outside of the right hip this time, and up in exactly the opposite pattern. Head up and chest up. At the top of the motion, your chest should be high. Okay? As you progress through this, you can actually add in an additional movement through the lower body, whereby the foot turns and pivots, quite like a golf swing, where you turn through and keep the weight of the ball of your foot. Don't worry about that too much at the moment, though. That's a progression that we can add. Okay, after you've done 5 repetitions each side, we're going to take the ball out, straight out to the front of your chest. Now from this position, it's very common to see the shoulder blades round out. We want to avoid that. So we want the shoulder blades in a position that we call retraction. We're going to pull, almost as if you're trying to pull your shoulders back into their sockets. Boom, into that position. So Mark, if I can get you turned on. Right, if you can show me protraction first, the reaching out and rounding your shoulders out. We don't want to be doing this. We don't want the back to be round, okay? You're going to pull the shoulder blades back into their sockets, and from that position, we've now got you in the correct setup. Again, the knees are bent, the bum is squeezed, and your belly button is pulled in just a fraction, just to keep you tight through the spine. From that position then, we're going to pivot the weight left to right, keeping the ball at exactly the same height. Okay, and if we start to integrate the lower foot motion as well, Mark. That's it. Maintaining that eye position just slightly above your own height. That's it. So this is a nice tidy motion. We're not dropping the ball, it's not going all over the place. It's very, very strict, and the shoulder blades are pulled back into that retraction. And stop. Okay, so up to this point, there have been no changes in height. Everything's been done at pretty much the same height. We're now going to start to add a little bit of knee bend, which is going to bring in the muscles of the thighs, the muscles of the bum, and actually start to bring about a lot more coordination. So we start to get into what I call my 600 rule. And the 600 rule is quite simple. We've got about 600 muscles in the body, and it's your job at absolutely every workout and absolutely every exercise to use as many of the 600 as you possibly can. It's quite simple. We're going to introduce a small squat, where the ball is going to come down to the outside of the left knee. And again, if you see me from side on, I'm not caving in from my back to get the ball down here. The chest remains high, and I'm looking above my own head height. Down to this position, nice flat back. We push the bum back as if you're sitting back into a chair. So we're avoiding a knee bend. Your knees aren't going to travel forward. Your bum is going to go backward. Ball is in the same position as before. Left palm facing up, right palm facing down. As you take the ball across the front of your body, you stand up, pivot, so you're marrying together all of the movements that we've done up to this point. So you've got a squat, a pivot, and a rotation, all together at once. Eyes following the tracking of the ball. So let's have a go with that, Mark. Sitting down the back, chest is high, reach across and turn. Okay, it's also useful for you to think about breathing out during the upward travelling phase. Okay, and you can exaggerate the breathing in the early stages, particularly until you gain the movement mastery. It really helps you get the coordination right. So you're going to breathe in on the way down and breathe out on the way up. Obviously, once you've done your 5 repetitions, it's important to do exactly the same on the other side. So now the ball goes down to this side, and up we come. Okay, we stay tight through the core, we keep the head up. There we go. The next position is going to be a spiral pattern. Okay? The body creates movements based out of spiral and diagonal patterns, and that's what this system of exercise is completely based upon. So we're going to make the most advantage of that by taking the ball out across the chest into a full arms extended position, pulling back into that retraction, so we're in the same start, and the ball is going to start small. We're going to start with very, very small circles, gradually, spiral fashion, increasing the range of the circle without losing the spine line, without losing the body posture, and without dropping the head. Okay, so again, from side on, we're starting very small, gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's all the way over the top. And you're going to do that across 10 repetitions. Okay, so we're going to go 10 repetitions in one direction, making the circle as big as we can. And then once we've done that, we're going to do 10 repetitions in the opposite direction, making the circle smaller and progressively smaller. Mark, let's have a go at that one. So we've got head up, shoulders retracted, belly button pulled in. As you can see, gradually increasing the range of the circle, so we're using more and more muscles across the shoulder girdle and really warming up that whole region up there. This is particularly important for some of the other exercises that are going to follow when we move down onto the floor, because otherwise you won't be warmed up through the shoulder girdle and there's a potential for injury. Again, as you can see with Mark, there's no unnecessary motion. He's actually staying pretty static, he's not all over the place. Okay, the next movement progression then is going to see us travelling even deeper. So the whole thing with integrated movement training is that it's a progressive system of exercise. We started up here, we went to our first level change. Okay? The next level change is going to take us all the way down to the floor. So we're going to go into a deep squat where the ball actually comes down to the outside of the left ankle this time. If you see me from the side, you can see just the extent of the involvement of the muscles of the legs and the hip. I'm very, very deep. But again, my spine remains long. I'm not rolling over, I'm not leaning over from the waist. Okay? It's a very deep knee bend, a very deep and steep hip bend. So we get all the way down here. From this position, we're going to come up exactly like the last pattern. We come up from here, up and across, and marry in the pivot. Now, don't worry if you find that you can't get all the way to the floor. I'm more concerned with movement mastery. What I mean by that is if you find you can only get about halfway down before you start to round out your back, I would rather you stop at halfway than continue to go all the way down and lose your form. Okay? This movement progression system is completely based upon you owning each movement. And what I mean by that is you're going to get each movement done perfectly. As long as you do that, you're going to get great results. If you start to cheat, and just in order to get to the deep positions you start to round out and add in compensatory motions, what you'll find is that the benefits are going to be slow in coming and you may even injure yourself. So Mark, let's have a look at that bottom position. All the way down to the bottom, outside of the foot, up and across in your diagonal, bang, and pivot. There's one. Making sure that at the top of motion, the lumbar spine remains neutral, so we don't arch the back. Again, he's looking at the ball as it travels across. And there's 5. Mark, if you could do the same on the other side, but this time just turn sideways onto the camera so people can see you from the side. Again, watch Mark's alignment. His spine's not rolling out, his bum is moving back, and the knees are tracking naturally. They're not pushing forward over his toes. Good. Okay, and the final movement progression with the ball is quite simply a marriage of almost everything we've done together. We're going to go for a pattern that I call floor, chest, squat, press. And the name actually tells you exactly what you have to do with the movement pattern. Quite simply, you're going to go into a deep squat where you take the ball all the way to the floor. Ideally, you're touching the ball off the floor. From sideways on again, we've got a long spine, we touch the ball off the floor. Stand up, bring it to your chest. Go into a second squat, ideally with your elbows slightly touching your knees, and stand up and press. Okay, so the movement is floor, chest, squat, and press. We're going to marry those movements together. Again, it's really important that the head stays up, the chest stays high, shoulder blades are back, and we're not losing our lumbar position. Mark, let's have a go with that. If you can do 5 for me, face onto the camera, just so that the people watching can see what's going on, and then we'll do 5 with him standing to the side, just so you can see from the side and you can see where all the joints bend and it's correct for you. Again, it's quite useful for you to be breathing out during the overhead press phase of this. Good, Mark, if you could turn sideways on for me. Exactly the same motion, but you're going to get to see it from the side. Floor, chest, squat, press. As you can see, every time Mark sits down, his bum moves back, okay? He's not pushing his pelvis forward, he's not pushing his knees forward. This is really important, and this will bring in the big muscles of the bum, which the gluteal group, which most people are obviously trying to work quite hard. There you go. Okay, now we can get rid of the ball, because the next movements involve you doing single leg standing. Now for a lot of people, single leg standing exercises are some of the hardest exercises that they can do. But they're really, really beneficial, which is why I included them in the program. First off, most of us aren't using our gluteal muscles, the big muscles in the bum, correctly. And this leads to a lot of dysfunction and creates problems through the lower back and through lumbo-pelvic alignment. And this can actually make you look fatter from the front. So we're going to get you stronger in this area by bringing the pelvis back and bringing about much better postural control. What we're going to have you doing then is initially standing on your right foot with your left hand up in the air. We've got a nice long reach up through the spine, and the arm is back in line with your ear. So if you see me from the side, it's exactly like this. I've got my bum squeezed, my pelvis tucked under, and my belly button pulled in slightly. From this position, I'm going to go over from the waist, taking my hand directly down toward my foot, ideally pausing in the bottom position and reaching up and coming straight up to the top position. Let me show you that from the side. Hand up, I come over, touch down, and back up. It's a nice long reach. The spine remains strong and long throughout the entire motion. What we don't want is a floppy arm, a kind of a half reach and back up. This won't bring about anywhere near as much benefit for you because you won't be using the muscles correctly. There's a lot of things going on in this exercise and initially it's quite hard. Now I would prefer that if you can't do the exercise correctly, or you can't do it across its full range, I would prefer you to build up to it across a short range and be masterful at it, remember movement mastery, rather than going all the way down but being floppy and all over the place. So build up your range of motion as you progress over time. Don't just jump straight into thinking, I have to go all the way to the floor and all the way back up. That will come, okay? So if you don't, we're not expecting you to be a black belt before you make your white belt. Build up over a period of time. Mark, let's have a look at you with it. Okay, so we do 5 to the front and then 5 to the side so people can see. Okay, so as you can see, Mark's a fitness professional and even his feet are rocking back and forward. This recruits a lot of muscles through the gluteal region, through the bum. Okay, and it takes quite a lot of skill to get all the way to that bottom position, so don't feel too bad if you find yourself rocking a little bit too. Mark's actually quite new to this pattern, and he's doing pretty well with it, but as you can see, the feet are still rocking. Mark, can you turn sideways on? Nice big reach, straight up from the ceiling, long spine, belly button in. Over you go, straight over from the waist, and back up. Good. We'll have 5 of those. Okay, you can see the spine remains long in the bottom position. And every single time he comes up, he's guiding himself up with this long reach of the arm. Now this is the driver along with the pelvis for the motion. Okay, so you're thinking of pushing your pelvis forward whilst at the same time actively reaching for the ceiling. And that's critical to the proper conditioning from this exercise. If you do that the same for the other leg, all exactly the same rules apply. Nice long reach all the way for the ceiling. Heads up, belly buttons in, chests high. Over we go. 5 repetitions. Again, breathing out as you extend up into this tall position. Fantastic. Okay, if I could just get you over here a little bit more. Okay, so that's the straight-legged version. Now I'm going to bring in more muscle by bringing about hip extension, hip flexion, knee extension and knee flexion. So it adds a lot more movements to the exercise. Because of that, there's a greater stability component, there's also a greater strength component. But it's a very similar motion. We're going to start from exactly the same position. I'm losing my mic. We're going to start from exactly the same position, only this time, bend the leg that you're standing on, and you're going to take the palm toward the floor, pause, and back up into a full extension reach. Okay, from sideways on, full extension, bend the knee, push the bum back, pause, and back up. Exactly the same as with the last exercise. I would much prefer it that if you start to find that you're losing control here, for you to stop and return. Stop and return. Over a period of even a short period of a few days, you'll find that you'll be able to get deeper and deeper to the point where, as I am, you're able to travel all the way up and down. Don't rush things, get the movement mastery going. Mark, let's have a look at this. Okay, nice deep knee bend, bum goes back, and don't worry, if as Mark did, if you start to find that you're losing your balance, don't think you have to flop about all over the place. Put your foot down, touch down, have a little rest in the bottom position with the other foot acting as a stabilising anchor, and then stand back up again. There's not a pure right and wrong with these exercises. The only way you're doing them wrong is if you start to allow your posture to falter. I would rather you put your feet down and give yourself some stability than actually lose your posture. Good, and we've got a nice long spine. Mark's looking up throughout. We're getting a nice deep touchdown and driving through the pelvis to stand up. Good, and if we switch to the other side, Mark? Okay, exactly the same, a nice long reach. Okay, so what we've got is a nice cross pattern. This arm and this leg are working together to create the motion. Nice and deep. flat long spine, bum pushes back. As he stands up by accentuating this movement, drawing the pelvis through. Number 4, and we'll have one more. 5. Okay, so those are the initial standing positions. We're now going to move to both the lateral swings and then the frontal swings. The lateral swings start by standing on the right foot. We're going to then take the opposite foot off of the floor and we're going to swing, just like a pendulum, across the front of the body. Now what's worthy of note here is that as my foot travels across the front of my body, whichever direction the leg is swinging in is the direction that the toes point. So as I come to my right, the toes point to my right. So I get internal rotation on the hip. This works a lot of the muscles through the groin and the inner thigh. As I swing back out to my left, the toes point out to the left. So now I start to use the external hip rotators and the deep muscles in the bum. So we end up getting quite a lot of work going on. But believe it or not, this isn't really the working leg. The leg that's having to work hardest is the opposite one. So the gluteal muscles on this side are getting a real good workout just from stabilising your body against all this movement. Now it's important that your body's not swinging all over the place to counterbalance the motion. We want a nice tall spine, belly button pulled in just slightly, and bum squeezed on the supporting leg. From that position, ideally I want you to imagine that you've got a piece of string that's coming up from the top of your head. Oops, I lost my position there. Piece of string coming up from the top of your head that's actually supporting your spine nice and long. So don't kind of drop down into this position. Mark, let's have a go. If you can just step slightly to your right, that's it, just so you're in camera shot a bit better. That's it, head up. Okay, so as you can see, we've got that imaginary piece of string coming up the top of Mark's head. The chest is high and the shoulder blades are back. Although he's swaying slightly, there's not a massive amount of motion going on here. And that's because he's managing to control his core muscles and keep this leg quite tight. So we've got internal and external rotation on those hips. And don't worry about the terminologies here, where internal and external rotation. The very fact is, every possible range of motion that his legs and hips can go through are being gone through with this pattern. Okay, Mark, let's have the other leg. Again, same setup position. Don't feel that you have to rush from one leg to the other just to get them done, okay? This is all about the movement mastery. Tall, belly button in, set your position, get everything right. I guarantee you, if you spend time in actually getting the movement positions correct, you'll get 10 times the benefit. Absolutely anyone can rush through these motions and they'll find that they're not getting anything from it. If you take the time and you set up your posture at the beginning and end of every single motion, like I explained to you at the start of this, you'll find that